At the Battle of Kirina, Soumaoro Kanté fought with sorcery and terror, but Sundiata Keita clashed with unity, steel, and destiny. This was not just a war, it was the birth of the great Mali Empire. In 1235, the Sosso Empire seemed unstoppable. For years, its sorcerer king, Soumaoro Kanté, crushed kingdoms with iron armies and whispered magic said to make him invincible. Villages burned, chiefs bowed, and fear ruled the savannah. But from exile rose an unlikely challenger, Sundiata Keita, the Mandinka prince once mocked as a cripple, now returning with a fragile alliance of scattered clans. To face the Sosso juggernaut, he would need more than swords. He would need alliances, strategy, deception, and the courage to strike where no one thought possible. This is the story of how a hunted exile became the Lion King of Mali, how myth met strategy on the plains of Kirina, and how one battle reshaped the destiny of Mali forever. The West African savanna stretched to the horizon, a sea of gold swaying under a pitiless sun. Here and there, colossal baobabs rose like ancient sentinels, their roots clawing into the earth, while the mighty Niger River wound its silver body through the plains, carrying life to kingdoms that had thrived for centuries. Along its banks, traders trudged in endless caravans. Salt from the Sahara, cola from the forests, gold from the earth itself, and stories carried from one fire to the next. But beneath this fragile rhythm, the old order was dying. The Empire of Ghana, once the unshakable pillar of trade and power, had splintered into shards. Where one crown had once ruled, rival chiefdoms now clawed for survival. And into this fracture poured a storm. His name was whispered with dread: Sumanguru Kanté, king of the Sosso. To his own people, he was a shield, a dark savior who promised strength. To the rest of Mandé, he was something closer to a nightmare. They said he wore charms that made him untouchable, that no blade could cut his flesh, that in his hall stood xylophones strung not with wood, but with the bleached skulls of kings he had slain. One by one, he descended upon the Mandinka chiefdoms. Niani, Kangaba, Taban, Do. None escaped. Chiefs were slaughtered on their own thresholds, entire villages chained and driven off, their voices extinguished in the smoke of burning huts. And with every conquest, the Sosso Empire swelled, like a fire consuming dry grass. The people of Mandé no longer spoke his name aloud. They whispered it, as though sound alone might summon him from the shadows. But even in the deepest shadows of despair, whispers of hope refused to die. They told of a boy, a cripple, twisted in body, yet destined to rise. A child both curses and promises. A child foretold by prophecy. His name would be Sundiata Keita. The tale begins in the court of Naremagan Konate, king of the Mandinka of Niani. A ruler revered for his wisdom and his fairness, he had many wives, yet none bore the child of destiny. Then one night a prophecy came, spoken by a hunter-seer with eyes clouded like storm-tossed skies. A woman will come, strange, ugly, mocked by all. Take her as your wife. From her womb shall rise a lion, a king of kings, the master of Mali. Not long after, the prophecy walked into his court. Two hunters arrived, leading a woman unlike any seen before. Her back bent as though burdened by the earth itself, her eyes dark wells of hidden power, her frame ungainly and scorned. This was Sogalon Keju, derided as the Buffalo Woman. The courtiers laughed. They sneered. How could a king lower himself to such a bride? But Naremagan remembered the prophecy. And where others saw ugliness, he saw destiny. Against mockery, against doubt, he chose her. And in that choice, the first stone was laid in the foundation of an empire. From this union came a son, Sundiata. But the joy of his birth soon curdled into despair, for the boy was crippled. His legs lay heavy and useless, unable to carry his weight. Where other children ran and danced, Sundiata dragged himself through the dust. The court snickered. Rivals mocked openly. His stepmother, the venomous Soumaoro, seized her chance, proclaiming her own son, Donkaran Tuman, the true heir. To her, Sundiata was nothing but a broken child, a shadow of the prophecy. Yet the traditional storytellers remembered. The seers had spoken. This was no accident of fate. The lion's roar had not yet come, but when it did, it would shake the earth. Still, Sundiata's childhood was cruel beyond measure. Children jeered as he clawed through the dirt. Warriors shook their heads in pity. And in the quiet corners of the palace, whispers grew. The prophecy was a lie. Only Sogolan, his mother, refused to bow to despair. Mocked as the buffalo woman, she carried her son's shame upon her shoulders, but clung to faith with iron resolve. She knew destiny moved slowly, like the deep roots of the baobab before it breaks the soil. Then came the day Sasuma's cruelty cut deepest. With a sneer that silenced the court, she spat, "Your son will never walk. What use is a king who crawls?" That night, Sogolan wept bitterly. But in the darkness, a fire lit within the boy. He crawled to his mother and whispered words that would change the world. "Mother, tomorrow I will walk." The blacksmiths of Niani labored through the night, forging a great iron staff, heavy as fate itself. At dawn, the boy who crawled where others walked dragged himself into the square. Before the eyes of his mother, his rivals, and the mocking courtiers, he gripped the staff and planted it into the earth. With trembling arms, he pulled. The muscles in his shoulders strained, his body shook, but the iron groaned, bent, and collapsed beneath him. Laughter rose around him, sharp as blades. But Sogolan did not laugh. With tears burning her eyes, she pointed to the ancient baobab that towered over the village. "Seconds. If you are to rise, my son," she whispered, "take strength not from iron alone, but from the roots of the earth." Sundiata crawled to the tree. He pressed his hands against its trunk, rough with centuries of storms, and clenched his teeth. This time, he pulled not only with his body, but with the fury of humiliation, the sorrow of his mother's shame, and the roar of prophecy stirring in his blood. The earth shuddered. The baobab trembled. And before the stunned eyes of Niani, the crippled boy rose. He did not merely stand, he walked, then strode, then seized the bow, the spear, the dignity that had been denied him. The griots lifted their voices, their words ringing like thunder. "The lion has awakened." Though Sundiata had proven his strength, his path was not yet clear. After his father's death, Soumaoro maneuvered her son Donkaran Tuman onto the throne. Fearful of Sundiata's potential, she plotted his death. Thus began years of exile. With his mother and siblings, Sundiata wandered from court to court, first to Mema, then to Wagado. Everywhere they went, Sundiata earned respect. In Mema, the king took him in and trained him in the art of war. Sundiata grew tall, broad-shouldered, with the strength of 10 men. He learned to handle the spear, command cavalry, and read the minds of his enemies. In exile, he became not a forgotten prince, but a warrior forged in hardship. Meanwhile, Sumanguru's Sosso Empire tightened its grip. He crushed rivals, imposed tribute, and spread terror across the land. Chiefs who resisted were slaughtered. Women and children were carried into slavery. The Mandinka groaned under his rule. In their despair, messengers remembered the boy who had stood from the dust. They sought Sundiata. By now, Sundiata was no longer a boy. He was a man of stature, with allies, warriors, and a reputation as a leader of men. When the envoys of Mande came to Mema, they fell at his feet. "Lion of Mali, rise. Sumanguru has enslaved us. You are the one foretold. Come and deliver your people." The king of Mema, reluctant to lose his champion, tried to hold him back. But destiny could not be chained. Sundiata rose, gathered his companions, his half-brother Mandingbori, his sister Nana Triben, his loyal generals, and began the march home. Everywhere he went, chiefs pledged allegiance. Old enemies offered tribute. From exile, Sundiata forged a coalition of Mandinka states, bound by one goal: the defeat of Sumanguru. The stage was set: the tyrant of Sosso versus the lion of Mali. Soumaoro Kanté was no ordinary king. Legends claimed he possessed mystical powers. He could vanish into thin air, conjure fire from his hands, make arrows fall harmlessly, and render himself immune to iron. But his strength was not only sorcery. He commanded a vast army, tens of thousands of warriors, hardened by years of conquest. His cavalry thundered across the plains, his infantry marched like an iron wall. To face him was to face death itself. Yet Sundiata had more than courage. He had a strategy. He studied Sumanguru's movements, learned his weaknesses, and relied not only on brute force, but on cunning. As the coalition grew, Sundiata summoned his generals. Around a fire under the night sky, they laid plans. The griots say his words burned with conviction. "Tomorrow the sun will rise on a free Mande. No man rules forever. We are the sons of lions. We will break the Sosso yoke." Drums carried the message across villages. Warriors sharpened spears, fletched arrows, and prepared for the greatest battle of their lives. Women sang songs of courage. Griots recited the prophecy. Children gathered firewood, knowing that night would soon blaze with war fires. And then the two armies met at Kirina, a dusty plain in present-day Guinea. The plain of Kirina shuddered beneath the weight of destiny, as dawn's first light revealed two vast armies arrayed for war. On one side, Soumaoro Kanté, the feared king of the Sosso, stood flanked by tens of thousands of warriors, archers, spearmen, and heavy infantry, vetted in years of conquest and draped in iron-studded leather. Oral tradition tells us the Sosso force was both immense and terrifying, drawing upon the people of Kaniaga and Kumbisale, the once great heart of Ghana. Across from them, the coalition rallied behind Sundiata Keita, a fusion of Mandinka clans, cavalry from Mema, fire archers from Ouagadougou, poison bowmen from Do, united yet smaller in number than the Sosso host. Sundiata rode forward, towering over his generals, including Fakoli Karoma, Tabanwana, and the rising warlord Tiramakan Traore, whose later campaigns would claim vast territories to the west. As his hand rose, silence seized the Mandan ranks. Then his voice broke the air. "Brothers, remember your children. Remember your chains. Today Mandan is reborn." The battlefield erupted in a single earth-rumbling roar. "Mali foe! Mali foe! Mali shall live!" Soumaoro answered with equal ferocity, lifting his dread axe as his army echoed back. "Sosso, drink the blood of Mandan." The rhythm of drums and stamping spears grew deafening. Without hesitation, Sundiata ordered the cavalry forward. The thunder of hundreds, perhaps thousands of horses driving toward the Sosso front like a living flood. Their cry, "Ngolo, strength," pierced the air. Blades and spears erupted into the Sosso ranks, causing men to tumble, horses to scream, shields to crack. Yet the Sosso archers loosed volleys that blotted the sun, and horses fell in agony, the lines stuttering under iron-tipped arrows. Seeing the shock, Sundiata raised his fist. The drummers changed tempo, faster, fiercer, like a heartbeat under assault. From concealed flanks, the Mandinka hunters emerged, their curved daggers glinting and chanting, "We are the shadows. the forest moves with us. They carved through Sosso formations, disintegrating cohesion into panic. Soumaoro roared, a voice heavy with sorcery and terror. He strode forward himself, mythology incarnate, swinging his axe in devastating arcs. Around him, his warriors braced, believing blades would not bite. But Sundiata's griot, Bala Fasike, raised his voice. "Behold the Lion of Mandan. Destiny rides with us." The chant wove into armor, turned sweat to steel, and Mandinka warriors pressed on. At the center of the conflagration, the two leaders collided. Iron met iron, myth met man. Spears shattered, shields splintered, dust and blood mingled as the Sorcerer King and the Lion fought for destiny. Then Sundiata drew his final gambit, a sacred arrow tipped with the spur of a white rooster, the one talisman whispered to pierce sorcery. It arced through the smoke, struck Soumaoro's shoulder, and finally broke the illusion of invincibility. The tyrant staggered, a roar turning to a gasp. Sosso warriors faltered. This was the turning point. Sundiata seized it, raising his spear in triumph. "Mali is free." The cry echoed back like thunder. With renewed fury, the coalition surged, enveloping the disintegrating Sosso force. Fathers and brothers fell, but their children roared on. Soumaoro, wounded, fled into the hills with only his gate left. His army fractured, melting into the dust of Kirina. When the dust settled, the field lay strewn with the evidence of war, but above the carnage fluttered the banners of Mali. The griots rose in song, the lion triumphed, Mandan rises. And from that blood-soaked plain, the Mali Empire was born, destined to become a crossroads of culture, trade, and legend. The Battle of Kirina was over. Sundiata stood victorious, his enemies scattered. Chiefs who had once been rivals now bowed before him, declaring, "From this day you are not just king, you are Mansa, lord of all." At Kangaba, the assembly of chiefs confirmed him as ruler. The Mali Empire was born. Under Sundiata's reign, Mali rose from ashes into glory. Trade flourished. Laws were codified in the Kurukanfuga, a charter of rights and duties. Roads and markets connected distant lands. Griots sang of a golden age when the Lion of Mali guarded his people. The Sosso faded into memory. Sumanguru, the tyrant who once struck fear, became a cautionary tale. But Sundiata became a legend, the founder, the liberator, the Lion King. The story of Kirina is not just of war, but of destiny fulfilled. It is the story of how one boy, mocked and crippled, rose to unite his people. It is the story of how tyranny was broken, not just by strength, but by unity, wisdom, and courage. Generations later, the Mali Empire would shine even brighter under Mansa Musa, whose wealth astonished the world. But all of it traced back to this moment, to Kirina, where Sundiata proved that the lion was not a myth, but a man who carried his people into freedom. And today, storytellers still sing his name, Sundiata Keita, the Lion of Mali, the king who never dies. If the Battle of Kirina moves you, don't scroll past. Like this video to honor the warriors who broke the chains of tyranny. Comment, had you ever heard of Sundiata Keita before today? And watch more tales of Africa's forgotten wars, of courage, strategy, and impossible defiance on the channel. See you in the next video.